As the shock and awe continues its reign of terror across America, we have to ask at some point, how did we get here?
Well, this is from Dr. Fauci, who wrote last month, if one assumes that the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the number of reported cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%, and COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of the severe seasonal influenza pandemic. Well, the seasonal flu's mortality rate is just 0.1%. So again, we've gone from possibly 3.4%, which is millions dying, to perhaps closer to 0.1%. See why it's important to let the data come in? Even CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta had to admit today that as bad as things can get, and they're getting pretty bad, especially in New York and some of these other hot spots, we do need to keep our perspective here.
The vast majority of people, even if you're elderly, aren't going to need hospitalization. The vast majority are going to recover. The vast majority are not going to die.
2019 began with an ironic excavation of the altar and statue of Sheep-Totec, the Aztec flayed god of agriculture and disease, whose worshippers wore the skin of sacrificed slaves for 20 days. This random archaeological event quietly set the tone in retrospect for what was to come. Meanwhile, exercises for a pandemic scenario codenamed Crimson Contagion began in January and ran until August of 2019. Roughly a dozen federal agencies operating in 12 states, along with the American Red Cross, American Nurses Association, and the Mayo Clinic, used the premise of a global flu epidemic originating in Chicago to identify weaknesses in the face of a real pandemic. The New York Times reported the simulation sobering results contained in a draft report dated October 2019 that has not previously been reported, drove home just how underfunded, underprepared, and uncoordinated the federal government would be for a life-or-death battle with a virus for which no treatment existed. The draft report, marked "not to be disclosed," laid out in stark detail repeated cases of confusion in the exercise. Federal agencies jockeyed over who was in charge. State officials and hospitals struggled to figure out what kind of equipment was stockpiled or available. Cities and states went their own ways on school closings. Sound familiar? And then the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hosted Event 201.
Good morning, and thank you all for being part of this pandemic emergency board.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died.
It's not just about handing people a piece of knowledge. It's also about how we incentivize them to manage their behaviours, which in any communicable disease outbreak, behaviour of one sort will minimise your chance of getting a disease versus behaviour of another sort, which may maximise that chance.
Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic. Twitter and Facebook are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak. For more on this, we go to our correspondent, Catalina Parks.
Chen, these accounts were created by several state-sponsored groups intending to sow political discord, and some individuals are seemingly seeking to gain financial advantages. Violence against healthcare workers and minority populations has been increasing. A recent riot highlights the real danger in these posts.
The elite Event 201 had the money and the self-proclaimed experts, but why has nothing actually come from it in real time? Was it simply warning a small group of elites what was coming? Time and time again, drills are exercised by the elite and governments months before an actual horrific event occurs. How long will we allow these white-collar criminals to practice their manipulation of the tax-paying public with blatant exercises of unspeakable tragedy? John Bound reporting.